Welcome everyone to Alexplained. I'm Alex, and today I'm going to be talking about Resident Evil's very own golden boy, Chris Redfield.
I told you to leave it alone, Ethan!
That's right. The zombie-killing, boulder-punching, tyrant-dismissing monster of a man, freakazoid, if you will, Chris Redfield. And since 1996, he has gone through quite a bit of changes, one of them being his look, the other being the organizations he's worked for. He started out on Stars, ended up on BSAA, and a few subsects of BSAA, and I'll be going through all of that while focusing on the mainline games. No mangas, no animated movies. They don't really have much of an impact on the mainline story, unless they do, and I'll qualify it. I'll let you guys know. But here we go.
This job is hard enough without civilians getting in the way.
According to the very first game manual, Chris Redfield was kicked out of the Air Force. Now this was retconned in Resident Evil 5, and it said that he resigned in protest. So make of that what you will. In any case, when he left the Air Force, he was picked up by Barry Burton, who invited him to join STARS. And STARS, okay, there's a lot of acronyms in this one. So STARS stands for Special Tactics and Rescue Service. Soon after joining STARS, he was promoted to the Alpha Team because he was really good at guns. America. More specifically, he had a great aim and extensive knowledge of all sorts of weaponry. It came in handy throughout the years. But in 1998, he led an investigation into the Alexplained Mountains of Raccoon City. There were reports of cannibalistic murders near a mansion that was owned by one Mr. Spencer. The Spencer Mansion, as it's known. And during the investigation, the STARS Alpha and Bravo team, most of them were wiped out, killed, but they did find out that the cause of these murders were zombies. Zombies, zombie dogs, zombie snakes, zombie monkeys, any sort of zombie thing, and this one big guy called a tyrant that's right over here, big claws. And naturally, the heroes did rescue the day. However, they had a couple of moles on the team. Number one, Albert Wesker, one of the biggest villains in the franchise's history. He was one of the leaders of STARS, and he actually was a double agent working for Umbrella. Spencer of the Spencer Mansion, he was one of the founders of Umbrella, a pharmaceutical company who was dabbling in BOWs, which means bio weapons. So that's like any sorts of monsters, zombies, and what have you. So Chris and the STARS team destroyed this Spencer Mansion because there was an Umbrella facility located just underneath it where they would do all their experimentation and creations and research. But, you know, be prepared for a lot of facility destruction and the facilities being underneath these weird mansions. There's a ton of that in Resident Evil. So as I mentioned, the heroes did save the day, but not without suffering quite a few casualties. The only survivors were Chris, Jill Valentine, which is Chris's best friend, Rebecca Chambers, a medic, and Barry Burton, who brought Chris onto the team, but Barry was also a mole himself, but he was just under blackmail from Albert Wesker. Speaking of Wesker, he seemingly died at the hands of this tyrant right over here, but he got better. So Chris was notably missing from Resident Evil Parts 2 and 3, which is funny because of the whole story of a citywide outbreak of zombies. He could have been useful. However, according to Jill's diary in Resident Evil 3, Chris was given a leave of absence from STARS for attacking a fellow teammate. But it seemed that Chris did it on purpose so that he can travel solo to Europe to further investigate Umbrella activities. Nothing came of this operation of his, because in Resident Evil Code Veronica, Chris showed up to investigate Claire's disappearance, on a tip given to him by one Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 2. So in this game, Chris ends up in Antarctica on pursuit of his sister Claire. And what he found was another Umbrella facility and a replica of the Spencer Mansion from part 1, you know, because you got to do those callbacks. But the other interesting note is that he runs into the supposedly dead Albert Wesker.
I guess I owe you an explanation.
But he has superpowers now. He injected himself with something or other, you know, being a part of Umbrella. So he's really unstoppable at this time and still working for Umbrella. Chris and Claire did end up destroying this Antarctic facility, but Albert got away and it didn't really do anything to Umbrella because they had a ton of facilities everywhere. But Umbrella did face the end soon after, but not in any mainline games, unfortunately. The story is sort of stitched together through a manga series and a chapter in Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles for the Nintendo Wii, which is a really fun railgun game. But this is really all the story there is to it. Jill and Chris, operating outside of STARS, just on their own, they ended up in the Caucasus region because of a report of these wolf monsters that were killing people. So when they traveled there, they found a town that was made up entirely of Umbrella staff. And the main Umbrella facility was underneath this town. They soon encountered Albert Wesker, who was also there to destroy Umbrella. As always, Chris destroys the facility, ending Umbrella once and for all. But that was the good news. Bad news is a bunch of rogue researchers from Umbrella sold a ton of research and information to the black market, which means bioweapons for all. This would lead to Chris and Jill joining the BSAA. And now I've got another acronym for you, which stands for the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance. Keep that one in mind because Chris stays a member of it throughout the rest of the series. So the joining of the BSAA brings us to Resident Evil Revelations. This game originally came out for the Nintendo DS, if you could believe it, and it felt and looked like a main big console release. Story-wise, it was a little closer to like a Metal Gear Solid game, really complicated intrigue and politics involved. However, gameplay mechanics-wise, there was a lot of inventory management, ammo conservation, a lot of stuff like that. So it was a return to form. So the story involves a series of bioterrorist attacks, all orchestrated by the FBC, the Federal Bioterrorism Commission. Now the FBC is an anti-bioterrorism group that rivals the BSAA, of which Chris and Jill are part of. Now, one of these terrorist attacks, the bioterrorists, I should say, involves a series of cruise liners in the Mediterranean Sea. The Queen Zenobia being one of them, where it starts off, Jill goes to, and Chris later teams up with Jill, and it's a whole mess that they uncover the plot. Like I said, it's very Metal Gear Solid-ish, but it's all resolved, and the BSAA come out stronger for it, and the FBC, done. Now this takes us to Resident Evil 5. But before that, there's a little prelude that's included in the game as DLC, and that is the Spencer investigation. You see, Chris and Jill were given a hot tip on the location of Oswald Spencer. Now, if you remember Mr. Spencer, he was the owner of the mansion from Resident Evil 1, one of the founders of Umbrella Pharmaceuticals. And Chris and Jill were hot on his tail, and this investigation took them to another mansion. Yes, Spencer just owns a ton of mansions. So when Chris and Jill do find Spencer, they find him dead at the hands of Albert Wesker. Yes, he's back. So the pair of heroes take on Wesker in a battle that they're just losing. They're getting the floor swept with them. But by the end of it, Jill tackles Albert through a window. They fall into a chasm, and no body's found, and Jill is officially dead on the record, according to the BSAA, because they can't find her body or Wesker's body. They are both dead. Yep, Jill, Chris's bestie, is gone. Or is she? Jill! Alright, so Resident Evil 5. But before I get to that, there's just something I have to bring up. You know, throughout the years, Chris has undergone a lot of, physical changes. But in this game, he really stands out. And this is the definitive Chris, in my opinion. And holy steroids. Chris is jacked to the gills. He is on the gas like no other. Just an absolute freakzilla, big papa pump. It's just crazy to see the transformation of Chris from tiny twink to genetic jackhammer. Okay, I'll stop. Resident Evil 5 involves the Kijuju incident, and Chris, still being a member of the BSAA, he joins his new teammate, Sheva Olimar. Totally underrated character, we haven't seen her since, but hopeful for a return. Now I'm going to throw a new acronym at you, and that is the SOA, Special Operations Agent. It really means nothing, but it's sort of like just a subsection of the BSAA that Chris and Sheva are a part of. So SOA, that's another one. So Chris and Sheva were set to intercept a planned bioweapons deal set to go down in the autonomous Kijuju region of Africa. Before they can get there though, they were attacked by a ton of villagers who were infected by the Plagas virus from Resident Evil 4. Having survived these attacks, Chris and Sheva later found out that the deal was set to go down between Tricell, a newly emerging pharmaceutical company, and Albert Wesker. Yes. So Albert Wesker, throughout the games, he was a busy bee, kind of like a Thanos, but instead of collecting gemstones, Albert was collecting viruses. So he had the virus, the T virus from part 1, the G virus from part 2. He also collected the Plagas from part 4. And he was now set to give Tricell the Ouroboros virus, which was in Africa, which is why he was there. Now, the one unique thing about Ouroboros is that it's a lot of fun to say. Ouroboros, Ouroboros, Ouroboros.
All right.
So there were two notable events to come out of Resident Evil 5. The first of which was finding out that Jill was indeed still alive, and she was being mind controlled by Albert Wesker thanks to a sort of gemstone in her chest. Don't ask me how that affected her brain, but it did. And her costume was outrageous. Just look at it. It looked good in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I didn't mind it there. And the second notable event of this game is that it finally happened. Albert Wesker eats it. He dies. But what a climactic battle. At the end of the game, Sheva, Chris, and Wesker find themselves inside of a volcano, just battling it out. Don't ask me how the heat doesn't kill them. But this is where we get that incredible scene of Chris punching a boulder. Just check this shit out. With Wesker finally gone, I guess Chris went through an existential crisis because he was afraid that another Wesker would show up. So another change of acronyms here. He goes from SOA to SOU, Special Operations Unit. All it is he's training the next generation of bioterrorism fighters, for the BSAA. But he mentors this brand new team of young up-and-comers And one of them he takes a special liking to, Piers Nivens, an expert sniper. Which brings us to Resident Evil 6. So RE6 is like the weird black sheep of the Resident Evil franchise. It's very polarizing, and I suppose it's probably due to the whole run and gun nature of this one particular game. Like, Chris has his own scenario, and it feels a lot like a Call of Duty game, or just like a war game where you get to play as Chris, but he's more of a Rambo type character. So story-wise, a civil war broke out in Edonia, an Eastern European country. And the BSAA got involved because there was a newly emerging type of bioweapon attacking some of the soldiers, and they were called the Javo. Now the Javo, there's an apostrophe in there somewhere, the Javo, they were kind of like zombies slash plagas from the previous games, where like they were kind of like zombies, but they could still use weapons. So Chris and his new team, they make it there, and they're just stomping on all kinds of ass. Until a woman who looked a lot like Ada Wong kind of bamboozled them and caused most of Chris's team to die. Everyone except for Piers. And Chris was actually hospitalized and put into a coma. And when he emerged from the hospital, Chris had a post-traumatic amnesia, and he fled from the hospital to sort of become a drunk, I don't know, an alcoholic.
Never thought I'd find Chris Redfield wasting away in a shithole like this.
It wasn't really explained, but they did find him in a bar afterwards, and Piers just snapped him back to reality, showing him pictures of his fellow teammates who died. Now when Chris snaps back to, he finds out that he's needed in the Chinese province of Lanxiang, where there's another bioterrorist attack. Now, these attacks are being orchestrated by Neo Umbrella, a new evil organization that have taken to restoring the Umbrella name. Now, while in China, Chris encounters the woman he thought was Ada. But it wasn't Ada at all. It was this woman who looked like Ada, but you should know it's not Ada because Ada wears red. This fake Ada wore blue. Come on, Chris, where's your head at? Blue, red, come on. So when Chris tries to kill the real Ada, Leon is there to intercept and protect the real Ada Wong, which leads to a really cool fight between the two most prominent male characters in the Resident Evil franchise. Although there was no clear winner, Leon does knock some sense into Chris, telling him that they need Ada for the information she has, because as always she's playing a role as a mold in between the evil companies and the good guys. Hot on the trail of this fake Ada, Chris and Piers wind up in not an underground facility. No, this is Resident Evil 6. This is special. They're in an underwater facility. Ooh. While in this facility, Chris and Piers encounter one of the nastiest looking BOWs I've seen as an endgame boss. And it's called House. It's HAOS. It's not even an acronym, but that's all it is. And to actually defeat it, Piers injected himself with the C virus, also known as the chrysalids virus, which emerged in Resident Evil 6. And this was basically the only way that Piers and Chris could survive. And Piers, knowing that this was a sacrifice on his own end, helped Chris escape before he could completely lose his own personality within this monstrous entity he was becoming. So yeah, Chris lost yet another teammate.
Another round.
Being such a polarizing game, Capcom decided they needed to have a big change for Resident Evil 7 to get everyone on board. And the way to do so was to introduce a brand new character, Ethan Winters, and sort of different style of gaming, which was more reminiscent of the original game. It involved a really big house and unstoppable monster creatures. Now, Chris Redfield does pop up in the end of this game, but boy, that is not our Chris now, is it? What did they do to our boy?
I guess I owe you an explanation.
Chris enters the fray by the end of the game to help out Ethan Winters against the boss creature, Evelyn. Chris gives him a gun nicknamed the Albert 01, named after Chris's old nemesis, of course. But in the DLC for this game, it's called Not a Hero, you get to play as Chris as he tracks down Lucas Baker, one of the family members in the giant house that I mentioned earlier. Now, it's funny that the DLC was called Not a Hero and it starred Chris Redfield, because this takes us to Resident Evil 8, aka Resident Evil Village. Now, there are some heavy-duty spoilers for this brand new game, so if you don't want to hear them, just click a little ahead. So seeing how BSAA handled the whole Baker Resident Evil 7 situation, Chris decided to go rogue and form the Hound Wolf Squad with teammates of his very own choosing. Now, the issue Chris had with the BSAA's handling of the Baker incident was that a lot of it was just put under the rug and really hush-hush. And Chris thought that it wasn't the BSAA's place to do anything of that sort. But you know, like when James Bond or Ethan Hunt for Mission Impossible, whenever they go rogue, they're not really going rogue, they're just doing their own solo effort, but still very much a part of their original organization. I assume that's what Chris was doing in RE8.
No.
Resident Evil 8 starts off with Chris killing Mia, abducting their baby, and also just kidnapping Ethan without any warning or hesitation or nothing to say to Ethan. But it did turn out that it was for a good reason. It was because this evil mold queen called Miranda was taking the place of Mia because she had mimicking abilities, kind of shape-shifting abilities, and she wanted to perform a ritual with Ethan's daughter, Rosemary. And, well, Chris found out ahead of time and decided the way to deal with that was just to shoot first and say nothing later until the very end of the game, when Chris would explain everything to Ethan in the middle of like a catastrophe. Yeah, great timing, Chris. Now, I would like to say at this point of Resident Evil lore, Chris is back on the juice and he's pumped the hell up. Yeah, he's nice, big, and wide, just like the Chris of old that we all love and remember. Now, back to the whole mold thing. It was established in Resident Evil 7 that the mold was affecting the Baker family, making them bioweapons and unstoppable monsters, and creating their own mold creatures. Now in Resident Evil Village, the mold was doing the same sort of things, creating wolf creatures and vampire creatures, fish creatures, mannequin doll creatures. Yeah, it was an entire mess there that Chris had to resolve, and he did so with his Hound Wolf squad. However, the BSAA did send over their own team, not knowing that Chris was there. And Chris discovered that the BSAA were using bioweapons of their own. Undead zombie soldiers went in to battle Miranda and her own monsters. So I'm guessing that the follow-up games are going to involve just that. Chris handling the BSAA in their own way, And hey, who knows? Maybe more acronyms.
No.
In the epilogue of this game, it's revealed that Rose, Ethan and Mia's daughter, well, she has special abilities, I suppose due to being half mold person, as Ethan was discovered to be made of mold. He was moldy because mold. So Rosemary is being trained by Chris and the Houndwolf squad to kind of use her powers for good instead of for mold.
Hey,
I think
because mold.
because mold.
Because mold.
Because mold. But
So that's another tidbit of story that I'm sure is going to come back in future installments of Resident Evil. Although there are no new Resident Evil games in store for us anytime soon, there is a Netflix movie set for release later this year. It's called Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. Now, Chris will be one of the characters in this movie, so keep your eye out for that one. So thank you very much for watching, and if this video has done anything for you, I hope it's to convince you never to build your facility under a giant mansion. This has been Lunchbox's Alexplained. I'm Alex. If you like what you saw, please like, subscribe, comment, follow us on social media, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.